The Battlehosts. Be a better gamer, build a better community.
Welcome to Battlehosts, a podcast and website dedicated to helping you become a better 40K gamer and to build a better community of players. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight is Matt.
Are you expecting me to say hello to everyone?
I'm expecting you to say hello, or at least hi, or howdy.
Oh, hello, everyone.
There you go. If you like what you hear, subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube to catch all the latest episodes. You can also follow us on Facebook under The Battlehosts. If you'd like to support The Battlehosts for as little as $1 a month, please visit patreon.com/thebattlehosts. If you join for $3 a month, you get access to our Discord chat, where we discuss all things related to the hobby. Now, in this episode, we are going to be talking about getting ready for the 9th edition of Warhammer 40K. And so I think, Matt, this is your, let's see, you said you started late 5th?
Late 5th, yes. And this, we're going to be covering on what to expect in 9th, based on previous editions.
Yeah.
Because we all have to temper our expectations, right?
Yes. Games Workshop never gives you exactly what you think, and so it's almost pointless to speculate about what 9th will be until you see it. And I think that's just that's good advice, because you just never know what's going to happen.
You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You think is a small tweak to rules often has ripple effects, and it's not as easy as it sounds sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. In changing editions, it's just a reality with this game. And so we're going to look back at our personal history with some of the edition changes and talk about kind of what excites us about the new edition, because they've released some information about it so far, and they will continue to drip feed us information from now till whenever it releases, although we actually don't know when they're going to plan on releasing it. So I think we're thinking July, maybe? Is that our good guess?
Again,
but that's all speculation. It's almost pointless to do that, right? So
again, we're going off of what has previously happened, and what has previously happened has not had a worldwide plague kind of interrupt it.
Yeah.
So usually it's late June-ish is when the editions swap over, but I would imagine July or August probably.
Makes sense.
Because we were talking earlier, they still have 2 Psychic Awakening books to open or to release. One's coming out this following weekend, and we don't know when the next one's coming out. And then we have the White Dwarf that have Death Watch and Harlequin rules in it, and I'd imagine it'll come out after that, because that's kind of their release schedule so far.
I guess if I had to guess, I would say no sooner than mid-July, but no later than mid-August. So I imagine there's probably a 4-week of rough window in there. I imagine anyone who's looking for the Lumineth stuff, though, for Age of Sigmar, that might be pushed aside, or the next general handbook. I mean, like you said, COVID's kind of throwing everything out the window of what they probably wanted to do, but I guess we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, we're also going to talk a little bit about our plans for the new edition to launch, because, we're in a holding period right now. We're in that weird spot where we've been in before, where you're just not sure what you can do. It helps, I guess, quote unquote, in air quotes, we're not playing games. So it's not as if we're playing 8th edition going, this is not going to mean anything. We're still in lockdown, or we're still social distancing. So we could play Garage Hammer, but we really haven't been. So we've all been in our houses, and at this point, I just came to the realization, I think I played my last game of 8th in February. I think that's it. Yeah. I think that's going to be it. So,
and by the time all this is cleared, I don't know if we'll be playing 8th anymore.
Yeah, I know.
I think it'll be 9th by then.
Yeah, I think locally here, I imagine if it's mid-ish July or whatever, I think we'll be coming out of it, which is exciting, because then the next games we play will be the new edition. So hopefully the timing works out. But I don't plan on playing 8th, though. I mean, right away, spoiler alert, I don't really have a need to. There's no reason to at this point. So it would just lead to more rules confusion, I'd say. Yep, for sure. And also, when the new edition launches, we're going to cover all the changes in detail, and we have some ideas for some content. We'll talk more about it when it gets closer, but we'll go through all of the specific changes between the 2 editions, just because I know that even though this is not a this is not a drastic edition change like 8th edition was. There's going to be lots of little things in there that we want to kind of parse through to find out exactly what the differences are. So as soon as it comes out, we don't know when, but we'll start releasing a lot of content around like what is 9th edition compared to 8th. All right, now before we get started, let's hear a word from our sponsor, DGT.
We all love Warhammer 40k, but sometimes games just take too long. Using a game timer is the best way to make sure games finish and for both players to get an equal amount of time. Check out the Easy Game Timer from DGT, manufacturers and designers of the timers officially sanctioned by the International Chess Federation. It's simple to set up and customize, and your settings are saved when it's turned off. It's easy to use with a large moving lever for changing turns and a clear digital readout. It's the most affordable and high-quality game timer on the market and is the choice of most 40k events. Whether you want to practice before a big event or you just want to be a better player, the Easy Game Timer from DGT is the perfect game timer for your 40k events. The DGT Easy Game Timer is available from many online retailers. Wholesale pricing is also available for tournament organizers. Check these fine clocks out at dgtnorthamerica.com. Speed up your game and improve your play with the Easy Game Timer from DGT.
All right, so let's jump back into our main topic. So let's go through some of the past editions and how it affected both of us. And so you said late 5th. Did you ever play a game with 5th edition?
Very few, probably. Yeah, maybe a handful, maybe, but no, not enough.
Yeah.
And I got into it when, by that point, people had kind of gotten jaded on 5th edition because of Grey Knights, but before that, it was supposedly a great edition.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that look fondly on 5th edition. So when I got into it, I bought the Assault on Black Reach box, but I never actually got to play a game of 5th. I remember seeing videos from some of the old guard, original YouTubers that would create videos on here's how to play the game, and I remember seeing it, but I never actually found people locally to play it. In 5th edition, the rule set had evolved from 3rd to 5th because 3rd was a big breaking point. They completely reset everything, and 5th was is highly regarded as the most polished edition at that point. It introduced true line of sight. It had simplified cover rules. It had a different vehicle damage chart, different wound allocation. But it was a very, very different game than kind of what we know now. And none of the additional stuff that we have with strats and traits and relics and none of that existed. Some people still regard it as the best edition of 40k. I kind of wish I had played it. But like you said, Matt, when I first got into it, Grey Knights were just dominating. And that was a codex, I think, that ruined that edition. And for many people. Yeah,
it was something like 60% of armies were Grey Knights or something.
Yeah.
At that point, because that book was just so out of whack.
Yeah.
And 5th edition, is as great as it was. I mean, it was, from what I remember, it started kind of a downhill slide of this whole true line of sight thing. Because true line of sight, true line of sight is not in every single tabletop miniature game.
No.
Warhammer's kind of one of the few that actually used it, or currently do use it, and the problem with it is that it really hinders like your modeling, and things like that. So, Custode players can know exactly what I'm talking about. Those Custode, the spears, jet bikes, those darn shield captains, they have a lance, and that lance is modeled to go straight up into the air. So the odds of them being able to hide one single character behind a piece of terrain is slim to none because of that darn spear. It's also hurt kind of ever since, because the true line of sight has stayed in the game until up until now, until 8th. It really limits modeling options. People don't use banners as much, and they don't use what other things. They don't use cool looking swords that are edged outwards. They tend to kind of poke things in so that they're easier to hide behind terrain, which is a shame. Which is a true shame.
And it's true. I mean, you only have to look at other tabletop miniatures games to recognize true line of sight it's cinematic, it's easy. You can explain it to a kid, really, anyone. Oh, by the way, if you can see from here to here, it's good. but it leads to lots of weird arguments. Arguments are just disputes, and it's just a weird. It's the only time I've ever had a game where somebody's like, "Oh, I don't think you can do that." It has been the line of sight issue.
Yeah,
like, "Oh, I can't see it. I can see it."
Yeah, that's probably the most common thing that judges get called over for, at least in 8th edition now, is that, hey, we need somebody to break the tie. Can I see the very tip of that dude's Prince Uriel's back huge banner? Can I see the corner of that banner?
Yep.
And the judge is like the tiebreaker, and like, yeah, you kind of can.
Yep.
Prince Uriel, why'd you come into battle with your flags flying? Don't you know?
Yeah.
Don't you know what game you're playing right now?
Yeah.
It's easier, kinda, but it definitely has, I would say, more drawbacks than positives.
And we should say we don't know what the new edition is going to have, but with just 5th edition is one of the it introduced it to make it a cleaner game, and we've been kind of living with it ever since. And so we'll see kind of how the rules evolve with this edition. But I think True Line of Sight is one of the last of the. There's lots of benefits to it, but there's lots of drawbacks as well.
Mm-hmm.
So 6th edition, that was my first real edition, the first one where I actually got games in. And I think I remember it was out new enough so that even though I was just getting into 40K, there was only a handful of people that actually had read the rules enough to really play it. Most of us were kind of learning it as we went along. So because 6th edition was just a drastic change. I mean, there was a local group I found that teach me the game, but it was very, very different. So you had a local group at the time. You had a garage group, right?
Yeah. And we were mostly playing 6. I mean, we still weren't playing a ton back then, but we were playing 6, and that was where that's where I kind of started playing more or less, like really, really getting into games. Yeah.
And you can see, I actually own all of the edition codexes. I went and I can't remember. Oh, I know. It was we had one of those like swap meets where you can buy old, people bring all their used stuff and sell them. And I think somebody was selling all of his old books for like a couple bucks or something. So I'm like, I'll pick them all up. And you can see that 6th edition, the production values went way up. This is when they started introducing things like hardcover books. There was a lot more models released during 6th edition. This is when the Warhammer kind of became this boutique hobby where they put a lot of things cost a lot of money, but they put a lot of design and effort into making things look good. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, they definitely reached a whole new level in 6th with the book quality, the art quality, the plastic model. They were really churning out the plastic models in, because that's around the Dark Eldar time there, when they kind of came out that huge Dark Eldar line that had all the witches and the warriors, the venoms, the raiders, the ravagers. I think the flyers came out around that time too. The flyer.
6th edition was kind of the flyer when all the armies started getting flyers. And I guess the thing is, in 5th, like, you could go years without an army getting an update, but then 6th edition, you started seeing things come out a lot. Knights, I think, came out, and well, actually, they did. They came toward the tail end of it. So,
yeah, and it wasn't near the release schedule that we have now, where you have stuff like every 2-3 weeks. I mean, you would sit on a codex, like a codex release would simmer for 2-3 months before another codex came out, or another model line came out. It was a pretty long trudge between releases like that, where we got any communication from GW.
Yeah. So this is when GW kind of had shut things down, right? They kind of retreated back to their Warhammer world, and they were putting out stuff, but they weren't engaging with it. So it's a far cry from where it is now, or has been even for the last 3.5 years. But the rules in 6th edition were trying to become more narrative. So it had things like Look Out, Sir, and it had challenges, which, oh man, I'm so glad those are gone.
Oh man.
It had removing casualties, closest model. It had focus fire. It had... Really, what happened, though, is that the game kind of got bogged down. It wasn't as clean a system as 5th edition, because they layered on some rules to try to make it feel more narrative and less of a tournament game. And Assault was harder because now they had random charge length. And they had Overwatch, and you couldn't, you really didn't assault from vehicles like you could, unless it had that special rule. Vehicles were really hard to kill in 5th edition, but then in 6th they become easy because they had hull points. You can glance them to death. And also 6th opened up allies. It was the first one to have the allies chart. And that was both good and bad, and the ramifications of which we're still kind of living with today, you know? Yeah. When people complain about soup, 6 was the first to do that.
Yeah, 6 kind of started it, and it wasn't soup. It wasn't soup like we're used to now, where you know there's Death Guard, allied with Thousand Suns. You know, at least they have something in common.
Yeah,
they're Chaos Space Marines.
Yeah,
you would see Eldar armies backed up by like 4 or 5 flying hive tyrants.
Yep.
Yep. Flying hive tyrants were everywhere. I mean, they were the most common model, I think, in 6th edition there, at least in tournament play, because they were really good, and you could ally them and you could bring them with you.
Yep. Yeah. It was legitimately ridiculous, and it only got and also 6th edition did the Lords of War because they released Escalation, and honestly, this was when the ITC started coming up with their FAQs, and so people still say, "Oh, I don't play ITC." Well, nowadays ITC is basically an independent tournament circuit where you put in points and you get ranked. That's it. They have a couple rules that they do for their games, but there is and they have a mission pack that you don't have to use. But now when people say, "Oh, I don't play ITC," it doesn't really make any sense. But back in 6th and 7th, it did make sense because you essentially were saying, "I'm playing under the ITC FAQ," which absolutely they needed because the games were broken.
The games were silly broken. They were
D-weapons were broken. They were exactly. It basically if you went unmodified anything and you just said, "Oh, let's just roll it right out of the book." I mean, what was the Town Ard that came out in 7th? That thing just dominated everything. Yeah. So,
and two up-rollable invulnerable saves were everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was not fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Which you needed to, because D weapons would remove units completely. So I mean, it was but and it wasn't easy to learn. How long did it take you guys to really get a grasp of 6th edition?
It probably took us longer than most because we played games so intermittently that you would learn stuff and it would be forgotten.
Yeah.
By the time you played the next time, I mean, it was not the most straightforward edition in the world, and I think they knew that. I think they knew quickly after its release that 6th edition was not well written.
No,
just put it like that.
No, and in fact, it was so. It was so poorly written in many ways. It had so many holes in it that 7th edition was a surprise. Like, it was a cleanup edition. It was a surprise. It just came out. I remember that. I'm like, what? A new edition? I mean, again, you remember back then they didn't have a community team. They weren't advertising their releases. It was only in White Dwarf. So we didn't have this lead up and we didn't have all the marketing that we have now. 7th edition just felt like it just sort of just came out. Like, it was just sort of, it just dropped.
Was it like 18 months or something like that between editions? It was
less than the 3-year cycle they normally are. Yeah. So, yeah.
It was really, really short, the time between 6th and 7th. And, because we didn't, like you said, we didn't get FAQs back then.
Mm-mm.
And so there was no way for them to clean it up other than, hey, here's another book with a homunculus on it, which I thought that was hilarious that they chose to have a homunculus on the 7th edition book cover. Like, does anybody know what that is?
Yeah, that was funny. And also, it was an explosion of supplements and codexes. This was when things started just feeling ridiculous. This was they had supplement. What is the name of the Marines that are the demon-y Marines? The Legion of the Damned supplement. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had which was a single unit. I mean, they had just nonsense at this point. They were putting out stuff without a lot of feedback, and I think they took advantage of the fact that they could turn things around quickly, and they put out a lot of just stuff. But this was actually 7th was the edition that I played in at several LVOs, a competitive thing, and many of the rules they were just broken. I mean, and you took broken things in order to compete. You had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everybody else wasn't. I mean, I think 7th was kind of the watershed where they stopped putting units in a codex. They not completely. They used to have a really, really bad trend of putting units in a codex that they didn't have models for.
Yeah.
They had a lot of HQ models, like the Dark Eldar Codex had, oh man, I probably had like 6 or 7 HQs that did not have models for them.
Oh, yeah.
And
Duke's Lith and all that, yeah.
Yeah, and the Baron and the Duke and Lady Malice and things like that. And what happened is it created kind of a vacuum, for people like, I want to use that model, but GW didn't sell it. So that would, capitalism, that would lead to some other third party casting and creating that model and selling it. Well, obviously Games Workshop does not like that because that's their intellectual property. And that led to Games Workshop spending a lot of its time chasing down those things, rather than producing models and rules and things like that. And 7th edition, I feel they did a lot better with that. They didn't have any units in their codexes that didn't have models. At least,
They had cleaned all that out. I mean, if you look at 5th edition codexes, I guess I can understand, especially if you've been around for a while, the nostalgia for it, because they have units in there without pictures. They've unit entries of things like Trueborn, and I remember going, what's a Trueborn? For Dark Eldar. Well, Trueborn was just whatever you wanted to do. It was a warrior with special weapons. But if you look at 5th edition, they were soft cover, mostly black and white. Couple things of color there. They had a lot of units in there that there were no models for, and there was a lot of creativity, and I think people loved that about the older editions of 40K. With 6th and 7th, you're right, they had hardbacks, they had, the only units in here are the ones we actually have models for, and they try to kind of make it much more cleaner and nicer, but you remove some of that, the player being able to kind of put their own creativity into it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, even using your Trueborn example, like having Trueborn was was something that you could use your creativity on, because Cabalite Trueborn, for those of you that don't know, there's Cabalite Warriors that were troops choices, and there are Cabalite Trueborn, which were elites choices, and the Cabalite Trueborn could just take more special weapons, I think and they had one more leadership and one more attack maybe. The difference wasn't huge. The whole fluff behind it is that Cabalite Warriors are grown in a test tube in a vat. They're cloned and they're created. Trueborn are not. Trueborn are actually born on, Kamara, or where they're actually born and, brought up inside the system. So they're regarded higher than the average warrior. There were a lot of really great armies I saw where people did really nice hand painting on like the Trueborn's armor. And compared to like the warriors to, separate them out, because that's how it would be in Dark Eldar society, is that the Trueborn were kind of given, the better end of the deal, obviously, and they got better armor, better raiders and things like that, where the Cabalite warriors did not. So just being able to differentiate that was a great opportunity, but obviously that had to go away because they didn't really have Trueborn models.
Yeah, they didn't. And so that went away, along with lots of stuff that were in books that have kind of gone away. And actually, if you look at even now, I think with Legends, they finally have removed the last of, hey, we don't sell this model anymore, or we haven't sold it in a long time. So I think you see the Legends is kind of like when they stop selling models, they'll become Legends models. And I think that's they've at least have a system now. So they're not completely gone, but for the most part, they're gone. Outside of casual play.
And you wonder if some of them are coming back or something, because there's some units that could be legend, could get legend status that they kept in, like the Space Marine Captain on bike. Technically he doesn't have a model, but if you buy a Space Marine bike kit, you can use one of those guys as a captain on a bike. You just need a couple of bits to bling them up, but you can make a captain on a bike. And with those, I didn't want to gloss over what you talked about with the explosion of codexes and supplements. In 7th, there were some really, really cool supplements that they came out with that I'm kind of bummed that they didn't keep around as armies. So like Khorne Demonkin come to mind. Do you remember Khorne Demonkin at all?
Yeah, that's a good point. They not everything was wonderful, but some of those, yes, the Demonkin was such a good supplement. That was really, really cool. With a unique mechanic that no other army had at the time.
Yeah, because how often do we see Khorne right now? We don't see Khorne at all.
No.
Now, when Khorne Demonkin came out, it was an army based on the premise of, it was very, very thematic, and it was very good and thematic. I thought they did very well with that supplement.
Yeah,
your army was like all Khorne, obviously, and you gained blood tithe tokens for things dying. And remember, Khorne cares not from where the blood flows.
Yeah.
He just wants things to die. You got blood tithe tokens or points for your things dying, your opponent's things dying. You got some for like just the round for as the round progressed and things like that. And it was really cool. And with these tokens, with these blood tithe points, you could turn it in for like, I'm going to spend 1 or 2 to have this unit of blood letters get an extra attack.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn in but there was some ridiculousness with it that obviously had to go away. Like, I'm going to exchange 8 blood tithe tokens for a free bloodthirster.
Yeah.
That can't really go. But just having things like that.
Yeah.
It's just a fun and thematic army that I'm kind of sad didn't make the transition to later editions.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess when I think of some of the stuff they came out with, some of it was really good. And they had the Eandon supplement, which was one of the first supplements they came out with. And I have to admit, the story was really cool. And it was the first time we started thinking about Iniad and Ynnari. They didn't call him Ynnari, but they called Iniad. And it was really, they set up the storyline in there. There was only like 3 pages of rules, and most people didn't use the rules. Most of it was more for the lore. So I can't say that it was terrible because I enjoyed the read. It just was, from a rules perspective, not super useful. It's just I think they had freedom to come up with lots of stuff, and they tried a lot of things. And for every Legion of the Damned supplement they had, you're right, the Khorne Demonkin, which was a really well thought out. And it's weird that they don't have that mechanic now, that idea of, as every time I do this thing, I earn a point and I can spend these points. They kind of do a little bit with Miracle Dice, kind of, but I don't know. It was unique. I would hope to see they bring that back someday, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if they ever do a World Eaters army, GW, if you're listening.
Yeah, World Eaters would be great, yeah.
Yeah, and having some sort of, blood tithe for that. I think that'd be super cool.
But I think it's safe to say at 7th, we were ready for 8th edition.
Yes, we were, because 7th was plagued with Lords of War were just, they're really good because they had this ability called Stomp. It was
Stomp.
Now you hear people refer to what the knights using their Stomp attacks. Well, it's not called Stomps. It's not Stomps. It's
Titanic Feet.
Titanic Feet, yeah, but they call it Stomp because in 7th edition, all Lord of Wars had Stomp. And because we didn't even talk about blast templates and how awful those things were.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot.
Get into blast templates and scatter dice and
Yeah.
deep striking, and if things scattered off the table, it was like there was a good chance that it just died.
There's a ton of randomness. There's a lot of charts that you rolled on. It was a lot of that.
Yeah, and the Stomp attacks, you basically put a small blast template over like a unit that your Lord of War was like just stomping on like a bunch of ants. And there was a chance that if you rolled a 6, that unit would just disappear from existence.
Or like
no saves, no nothing. You just disappear from existence.
Yeah, and so ITC, the FAQ, had to go in, and it got really intense toward the end. I mean, the ITC FAQ was many, many pages of fixing things like that. To try to make it competitive. But the good thing about toward the end of 7th is when GW finally started, they got a new CEO, they started talking to the community. They have a playtesting team. I think who knows when that finally came together, but they started to listen to the community and they came out with their huge FAQ. And I remember that and I guess to come to find out later I think it was a member of the community team that had, was responsible for that. But basically they said, all right, guys, what are your questions about 7th? And it was pages and pages and pages of an FAQ. They finally went through and cleaned up everything that they had neglected for years to fix.
Yeah. And the word is that the new CEO actually played the game. Yeah. The new CEO was a tabletop gamer who had played Warhammer before, and that was one of the first. The Roundtree, I think that's one of the first ones to, it's
actually
like, hey, why are we? Yeah. Like, hey, why are we not talking to the actual players, the ones that use this product? Because if we increase our satisfaction, obviously we're going to maintain a customer base. Because Warhammer was hemorrhaging players.
Yeah,
it was. It was not good in 7th. No. Things got to be really ridiculous there at the end, and I mean I'm not going to say we're partly to blame, but did I have a soul-bursting Wraith Knight going up the table every once in a while? I sure did.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Ynnari at the end of 7th edition was kind of the pinnacle of ridiculousness, and battle companies where you had Space Marine armies with 8 or 9 free rhinos or Razorbacks, no points.
Or that had warp spiders allied in with that battle company. I mean, why not?
Yeah. So why not? yeah. The ally system was still around, but it was just really interesting to see when GW took the reins, and at the very, very end there, which was curious because they knew that they were in the twilight, hours of 7th. Just that massive undertaking.
Yeah.
For all of that, and that FAQ was so long, and they did each and every army.
I was shocked at how much time they spent on that, and I know, and that was time they spent that they weren't getting, no one was paying for that. It was we're going to fix our game. It was impressive, but also I think they finally understood exactly how broken their game had been, every edition is unbalanced. It's just the way it is. That's the game. But there had never been such a disparity between the worst and the best. I mean, it was a huge distance between really, really top tier competitive armies in 7th and just, hey, I want to play this with my friends. I'm just starting out. So that was the problem.
Yeah, and people were leaving because they couldn't play. Like the army they wanted to play wasn't even in discussion for playable at times.
Yeah, for sure. Now 8th edition has been 3 years since 8th edition came out. Not quite 2 years, and 8th edition came out the 3rd week of June, right? Because it was just before Boise Cup of that year that it came out, the first one.
We know it'll be at least 3 years of that edition. At least.
It'll be 3. But 8th edition basically was a complete change. We all know that. All the rules were completely different. Everything got basically indexed. All the codexes were invalidated, everything. So it was a hyped edition because at this point GW had their community team and their marketing machine kind of working. And it was... This edition, the newest one that's coming out now, is going to be probably the most hyped, but before then, 8th was the most hyped. Like, it was really the big, like, okay, hey, trust us, come back to us, and we know we made some mistakes, and hey, we have this edition now, we have some playtesters, we've been doing this, we've heard feedback, and it is, it was actually, I will admit, 8th edition, because of the sourness of the last one, it felt like just a universe of possibilities, like, oh my gosh, maybe we can use Land Raiders again, and I hate to say the reality kind of finally comes crashing in a little bit, but we realize that it's just like every other edition, except it's not quite as extreme and it's easier and cleaner and a little more fun than 7th. But it also has its imbalances. I mean, let's face it, there are things obviously in this edition now, the current 8th edition, that it's not as balanced as you'd hope. It's a lot better, but there's still a big difference between the good stuff and the stuff that people might take without really knowing any better.
Yeah, but I think we can agree that the teeter-totter is not clearly as weighted down on one side as the others. Everything's kind of in contention now. If you have an army that you really enjoy to play, there is a way to make that army work.
Yep.
For the most part.
Yeah.
With a few exceptions. I mean, if we were to have that conversation in 7th, there would be maybe 3 or 4 armies that you could discuss as, in the mix for being really, really good. Now there's, 10 or 12, in there.
Yeah. And this is just match play too. What I really like about 8th edition though, is that it removed a lot of the randomness as far as, You don't roll for traits. You don't roll for psychic powers. You don't roll for relics, or you don't pay for it. You just get them. You select them. You don't. It removed a lot of the I rolled the wrong thing. Darn it. Well, I'm not going to be able to do what I wanted to do. You pick a lot of things. You select stratagems to use. It put a lot of player agency back, and it removed a lot of the randomness from past editions, which I think they used randomness as a kind of a substitute for, hey, this is fun and wacky and exciting. Now I think if we had to roll for traits all over again, it'd just feel weird. Like, what?
Do you remember playing demon players in 7th edition?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with the tetrad.
Yeah, the tetrad, or just any demon player, because you had greater traits and lesser traits that they paid points for, and then there was psychic powers, and there was warlord traits. It was literally a 30-minute setup to just watch this demon player roll all of their stuff, because they had 7-8 characters that all had greater traits and lesser traits and psychic powers. The fastest one I'd ever seen was 20 minutes, and the dude had a laminated sheet with all of the traits and warlord and traits, warlord, greater traits, warlord traits, and psychic powers, all on this laminated chart, and just an expo mark going, and it still took 20 minutes to get us all set up. I mean, I'm with you that it's so great that we don't have to roll for that stuff anymore, because sometimes you'd take 3 psychers in order to ensure that you got this one psychic power.
Yeah. I mean, I ran Seer Council. I had to have a cheat sheet. Otherwise, I couldn't run that army. There's no way. Yeah. There's way, way too much. But the thing that you see with this edition, that throughout the entire edition, they have been releasing FAQs. They've been adjusting points. They have been making slight changes to keep the edition going, whereas in the past, they just set it on autopilot and release stuff. So they've been curating this entire time. And that, I think, is what's been most impressive. And also, I mean, the books are getting more and more interesting. So if you look at, the AdMech book, the original AdMech book, it's okay. It's not that amazing. But then you look at Dark Eldar. Oh, okay, they're starting to get interesting. The Night book is really interesting. Genestealer Cult here's a new mechanic. So you see them becoming more and more comfortable and competent within this design space that they've created. And there's more and more interesting rules as the codexes have come out. Now, if Space Marines had not come out and been quite so dominant, I think we would have, and I think maybe toward the end of this edition, there was a little bit of a misstep on their part. I think we have to admit that, right? But if they had come out and it wasn't quite as strong as it was, and maybe some of the fixes that they have now were part of the original decks, I think it would be regarded right now, even though no one's playing, as the most balanced edition of 40K.
Yeah, I can only, see maybe 3 missteps in 8th edition. One was Malefic Lords. Yeah. Malefic Lords and with the smite mechanic. This is a small misstep. That one got fixed relatively quickly.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, well, here's a fix. Boom. +1 to smite. Yep. Cast. Yep.
The Castellan, which was from day one was 100 points undercosted.
Yep.
In combination with the 3-up invul to a knight, which is just frowny faces all around.
Yeah.
They saw how bad that one was, and they issued a points change in the November FAQ.
Yeah. It took a while. Yep. It actually took a little longer than
April.
it should.
It was last April but they don't increase points in those FAQs usually, but they saw that the Castellan was a huge problem, and they did not want to wait until December.
Yeah.
For chapter approved to come out. So good on them. I think the worst one, like you said, was probably the Space Marine Codex. That thing was,
and most specifically, Iron Hands and Imperial Fists. Those two are the most worst offenders as being kind of unfun.
Yeah, they were the bad babies in that whole thing. They've gone a long way into fixing them with the doctrine changes. You're right. It was an inopportune time for them to release something that was imbalanced like that at the very end of everything.
Yeah, and I think Matt, I know that you ran Ynnari, but Ynnari was also the Soulburst mechanic. Unfortunately, they ended up killing Ynnari. They couldn't fix it. They kept tweaking it, changing it, tweaking it, and changing it, and finally they just ended up destroying Ynnari. Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, the new Ynnari Codex is it's okay, but you don't see them, and it's just not as interesting as it used to be.
Oh, it's terrible.
But the double activation, they couldn't fix it. They couldn't figure out a way to make that work.
I mean, fair enough. Yeah, it's a kind of activations or the way that the game works.
Yeah.
And when you're giving extra activations to one army.
Yeah.
And it was something that they tried to tinker with, and still, it was never. I would argue that the Ynnari were never as broken as the Castellan was, or ever as bad as the Space Marines, because even in its heyday, there weren't a ton of Ynnari players out there.
Not as bad as the Iron Hand, and not as bad as the Space Marine list that won LVO. That there was a bunch of those. That is egregious. Honestly, it's bad.
Yeah. And when you have an entire team, and it was an entire team from Florida, that had like 7 or 8 of them there, and they all brought the same list, and they all,
yeah. And of course, but all's fair and matched play, right? That they not to disparage them taking it. It's the system was let them do it, which is the problem with the game, right? That's the issue. Yeah. So. But I think those are the only whoopsies that I've seen them make in 8th. But I feel they've been pretty great at responding and adjusting, in time. Yeah. So even if they break even if something kind of slips through and comes out, they have eventually will fix it. So we say these things, but there have been lots of little. There was the birds with Eldar and Dark Eldar. There was the 5 Storm Raven list. I mean. They have been very good about just slowly sort of like, okay, let's make a change here. They've been very good about curating their edition as this entire edition has gone on. And they've also had playtesters in place this entire edition. So, which leads us to 9th edition.
Well, and real quick, we were not used to them curating their edition. We were not used to them fixing things.
Yeah.
And I say that as I am sitting in front of a shelf at my house with 30 Razorwing flocks behind me. Okay, I have 30 Razorwing flocks because when the edition came out, they were really, really good.
Oh yeah,
and they were kind of fun to play too because they were just these birds, and you would sing the 80s hit from the Flock of Seagulls every time you played them, and it was just interesting to see a knight be surrounded by a flock of birds and not know what to do because he couldn't step over them and he couldn't move around them
because they would essentially
block a knight in combat. And they were really good and really cheap for their points.
Yeah.
But we're not used to that. We were not used to them curating their edition. So there's schmucks like me that have 30 Razorwing flocks sitting on their shelf, and there's people that have 4 or 5 Storm Ravens sitting on their shelf.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's a good point. And I think that no matter what happened with the 8th edition, you always were confident that eventually they would address it, which we'd never felt that. And it was a nice feeling to know, okay, eventually this will get addressed. And I think that's great. But with this new edition, they have had all these systems in place this entire time. And I'm sure that they started working on 9th edition not too long after 8th edition launched. And I have high hopes for this because it's a cleanup edition. They're not invalidating anything, which is good because no one wants to get rid of all their books. Because I've got a lot of books. And I don't want to get rid of them, right? Until a new codex comes out, I don't want to get rid of the Vigilus books that I have or the Psychic Awakening books that I have. The thing that has changed is there's been this 8th edition's been in place with all these playtesters. They've got a lot more feedback directly from the players this entire time. Their design team, this is something that's not quite obvious, and it was interesting. I listened to Voxcast, and Voxcast had an interview with Duncan Waugh, and he was a new member of the design team that was brought in about a year ago, and he was talking a little bit about working on like a Psychic Awakening book, and he was talking about his process for playtesting and things that he does, and he was part of, I don't know for sure because they don't really ever talk about it, but I think their design team has expanded and they have included more people that are more in the game's design space. And so you see there's more, I want to say professional game designers, but they're hiring more game designers to kind of help build this better edition of 40K, but also the codexes and stuff and the rules that are involved. So
yeah, and we've started to see that with some of the Psychic Awakening books because they've said that these Psychic Awakening books, they've said in their releases that they were written with 9th in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in these Psychic Awakening books, we're seeing some rules that we haven't seen before. Like Gazgul's rule is coming to mind, only able to lose 4 wounds a turn maximum.
Yeah. That's
we
new.
haven't seen anything like that before. So it leads you to believe that they've gotten a more expanded or diversified rules writing team, which is great.
Yeah. The reroll once to hit is so 8th edition, right? I mean, that was the first thing they came out with, but they're getting more interesting. So like with the AdMech, they have a stratagem for one of their Archaeopters is to shut an aura down within 6 inches. I'm like, okay, that's different. Shutting down auras was something I think that the Night Lords had in their Psychic Awakening book, but you can see that there's all these interesting little things they can start exploring. And Psychic Awakening...
Mark, that triggers another FAQ. Does a Tau drone savior protocols count as an aura?
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see if...
That was gonna need FAQ'd.
It will be, yeah, because until Tau get a new book, which, whatever, or until... Because there's going to be keywords in the new edition they're going to have to do some work with. So I anticipate that even though nothing's been invalidated, there's going to be big FAQs that are coming out for the new edition, just because they're going to have to help define some of the things that were in the books that were a little bit older. But yeah, I think they've learned what they can and can't do with the rules. I think most importantly, they themselves have learned what they can and can't do with 8th edition, and also what they need to expand on and what they need to be much more clear about. Yeah,
and you can tell from these Psychic Awakening books, they're getting better at identifying the order of operations for things. This fights first. No, my thing says I fight first. No, my thing says I fight first. They have, now it's not 100% crystal clear, let's be honest, but in these books, in these Psychic Awakening books, they're doing better at defining things like that, because that has been a kind of a sticking point with 8th edition. Like you said, it's going to be a cleanup, which is such a luxury that we have instead of starting over again. They started with a nice base in 8th edition. They're just going to kind of clean it up a tidge.
Yeah. I mean, COVID-19 has had a huge impact on their releases. It's had an impact on whether we've been playing, because we haven't played, and I don't imagine this is something they anticipated. I would bet, like we said at the very beginning, they wanted this edition out now, or in June, I imagine. But we will see when it comes out. I think that really right now is, in a funny way, I'm really engaged with the hobby. I'm engaged with their... I consume the stuff that they put out. I listen to lots of podcasts. I'm actually doing a lot of painting. I'm not list building and I'm not playing. So I'm kind of doing all this stuff that you do individually, by yourself with this hobby, which actually there's a lot of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, every rules thing that comes out, I'm like reading it and going, oh, hey, what do they release now? I mean, it's out of control, actually. The marketing is definitely working on me right now.
Yeah, and I think it's working on all of us, because I don't think we have been for the past 3 years, used to this release schedule that they have. Now there are some get a week off every once in a while where they focus on like Apocalypse or Aeronautica or Titanicus or things like that. But they're releasing stuff like every month for 40K. And so it's a lot easier to keep their claws in us and keep us engaged and keep us, very interested in the hobby when they're releasing stuff regularly. And, there's a chance that some of that stuff could be ours. Looking at some of these new AdMech models that, are right up your alley. Mark.
Oh yeah. And the prices have gone up, but I mean, it is what it is. And so, I'll order a bunch of those for sure. And I don't know if they're good or not. I just think that, when you have a collection of an army and they release new models for it, you buy into them. That's just kind of the nature of it. So, all right, let's talk about 9th edition. And they were doing a bunch of these like reveals online. And they kept saying the biggest, it was Saturday, well, for us, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon for them. And they kept saying, oh, this is going to be the biggest reveal yet. And I have to admit, the first 2 or 3 times they did it, was kind of like, okay. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't bad. And then finally, they basically really teased this when they announced this new edition, they teased the crap out of it. Like, okay, 2 days left and 1 day left, all 40K. And I have to admit, that reveal was their best reveal that I've ever seen them do. Like, it was knock it out of the park, amazing in that they teased just enough to get you excited, but they really did kind of give you a sense of exactly what this new edition is going to be.
They did a great job at giving us kind of that overview of the armies, of that Necron and that Space Marine army, and they told us what some of the units were. They didn't tell us what all of them were. So, within minutes of that release being, over, you'd see all these things online about the pictures blown up. Like, what is this model here? Like, oh my goodness! Is that Chaplain Cassius? Yeah. Oh man! And it's just a lot of hype, a lot of conversation going on after that reveal. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the video they did was probably, they haven't done a video that good in-house in a long time, or who knows if it was in-house, but it was an amazing video for a tabletop miniatures game. It wasn't Blizzard at their best, but it was Blizzard at their 80% probably. But it was good. It was really, really good. It was amazing. It was very atmospheric, and it really did a great job of setting off, hey, here's the new edition. But what excites you the most about it? So we've had that. We've had a couple FAQs with the developers. We've had a couple updates to the Warhammer page so far. I mean, we know some of the rules teases they've been doing as far as some of the changes are going. But what is it about this edition, the new edition coming out? What's exciting to you the most? What is exciting me the most is when they have come out and said, flat, point blank, they said games are going to be shorter. Now, they have not said specifically how they're going to do that. I mean, they've talked about how vehicles and monsters are going to be better now. I would imagine it's something in that realm of they're going to be incentivizing taking vehicles or monsters or things like that. And I am thrilled for that. Yeah. Having, going to tournaments and things, and even just not tournaments, having 3.5 or 4 hour match play games, it's too much. Games should not take that long, and it's not, it's no dig on my opponents or anything like that. It's just an addition that favors certain armies, and some of those armies may not take a lot of vehicles, may not take a lot of monsters. I mean, they may be spending a long time moving a lot of bodies or things like that. I don't know, but I am all in for any sort of rules tweaks or new rules that speed games up. I think it would help everybody.
I think so. That's good. I think to me, the app was absolutely out of nowhere. We have talked about they need to have an app forever. They need to have a digital solution to this problem of I have a book and then I have to go online and find my FAQ in 3 different spots. So if this app, in every app is going to be, it's going to be its first, V1 is not going to give you everything you want. But they said it's going to list build and to be able to track mission progress, and you'll have access to your rules on the app. Man, that's amazing. That is amazing. It's huge. Yeah. It's huge.
And I wonder if it's going to be like their Citadel painting app. Their Citadel painting app started out very simple, and they took great lengths to perfecting those simple features before they added on, and then they added on more to that. I hope it's like that, because I can see why I'd be excited about that, because the potential for that is up there. Because I mean, I don't know about you, man. I think last LVO I had to bring 4 books. Yeah, 4 books.
Yeah, I want to bring a single, like either my phone or like maybe get an iPad mini and have everything in there and feel comfortable using all that. Yeah, that's what I want.
Just take that around and you'll be good. It's just such a pain hauling around all those books.
It is, and it gets updated so quickly. Like, I mean, you pull out the AdMech book and go, these points have been changed 3 times since then. Granted, it's an old book, but it's just like there's nothing here. Like nothing here is accurate. This is all a fiction from 3 years ago. So
it's like, oh, you read off this rule like, oh yeah, that's the rule, but that's not, because it was fixing an FAQ, but I don't remember which FAQ.
Yeah, exactly.
Short circuit.
Yeah. And that's what I want.
It's also great to hear that they are doing something with terrain. They have not been they haven't gone into super, intense length about this one, but them having any sort of rules or guidance for terrain would be amazing.
Yeah.
Because, their big hook during 8th edition was that, or when 8th edition was coming out, they're like, it's going to be like 12 pages of rules.
Oh, yeah. Make it simple. Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be super simple. Well, that's cool and everything, but none of those 12 pages of rules had anything about terrain in them.
No.
And it's just such a thing that's up in the air that if you don't sit down with your opponent in the first 5 minutes of the game and define every single piece of terrain and what that definition means to them in their gaming group is another one.
Oh, yeah.
And you do that, if you don't do that ahead of time, you're setting yourself up for some arguments, later down the line. So them having terrain rules, even general terrain rules, would be amazing.
Yeah. Now, they had a video about the 9 things to know, and they talked about a bunch of like rules changes like that. And by the time you hear this, there will be more and more of these little rules that will come out, right? But without the context, it's kind of hard to know. Just to know that the stuff they're saying are things that we have said and on this podcast and thought about. Hey, I really wish they would do something about this. Like they're answering some of the problems or questions that we have had with this edition. It seems like now how they do that, I don't know, or how it works. Will it be effective? But it seems like they've been living with 8th for so long, they know what doesn't work and what needs to happen. And that gives me a lot of hope that 9th will be, it'll be really, really a clean, really well put together edition that plays, like you said, hopefully it plays a little faster. And hopefully there's less rules arguments. That's all I really want. And also, God, the new Necron model line is it's amazing.
So cool.
They have redone that completely. Like, I am shocked that they redid the Warrior. It looks like they have alternate destroyer kits. I mean, the monolith in that one picture looks like it's new.
It's a new monolith. I cannot believe they redid the monolith. That's a plastic kit.
Yeah. And so that is truly because and I don't play Necrons. They're not my army, but basically I'm looking at it going, okay, if they're willing to do this for Necrons, that means that there's a lot of armies with kind of crappy troop boxes or not crappy, just dated, that need updates, that need love. And first thing I'm thinking of is Eldar. If they're going to do this to Necrons, they could do this for Eldar as well. They could do this for Guard, because the Guard infantry boxes are a little bit rough. They could fix the Orc Boy kit and make that a little more beefy to make it look more, a little more modern. This is just, the fact that they did this with Necrons, I think is amazing. And I think it shows that if they're serious about updating a model line or model range, they go all in and they make changes, really effective, drastic changes. And I can see this happening for other armies.
Yeah, I'm not holding out hope for Eldar. They have so many things at the front of the line. Plastic Rangers comes to mind.
Yeah.
Plastic Aspect Warriors that are not Banshees or Dire Avengers come to mind.
Yep.
Plastic Phoenix Lords, not Genes R, come to mind. I mean, I'm not going to pray for a new Guardian kit anytime soon, but yeah, for sure. The Orc Boy kit comes to mind because that's old. That's an plastic kit, and it's great to see that they're starting to weed out all the fine cast and some of the that are in some of those army lines. Like, I don't know, the Necron Warriors were fine enough. Those green rods were kind of hokey.
Yep, and I think any kit that had those weird green glowy nonsense things, the Lego pieces, they basically got rid of those. So, yeah. But I mean, I guess the thing about it though is that for players that play the Necrons, they may not want to go out and buy new Warriors, but for a brand new player to the game, they might look at that and go, ooh, that's an interesting faction because it's just as cool as Primaris. Like, it's got all these new models and it's, it holds up to Death Guard. It holds up to the newer stuff that's come out. So Necrons now they're they could be appealing to a new player because they have gone through and just got rid of some of the really the dated models that need to get dated or they need to get updated, and got rid of a lot of the Finecast stuff. Well, hopefully, we'll see. They've changed a couple Finecast, and Necron have a lot of Finecast characters though. I don't imagine all of them will get updated though.
Well, there was a lot of models on that sheet that we didn't see, and they already previewed the new the Illuminator that was. And if you go back and look at his Finecast kit,
it's so bad.
It's awful.
It's so bad.
It is awful, that Finecast kit. But
yeah,
it'll be great to see the new Plastic Warriors, and maybe they make some other. There's not a ton of Finecast in Necron line besides Flayed ones, maybe.
Yeah. Just Flayed ones in their characters, really. Yeah, I think so. That's it. Yeah.
It'll be cool to see. Maybe it'll be like the. All plastic line now, be in line with like Gene Stealer Cult and things like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's only, and they, the fact that they went and replaced old kits is good because I know that I'm always worried they're going to put out new kits, not replace old kits, and I want old kits replaced. But the fact that they did it for Necrons means they can do it for everybody. And that's what's exciting. Yep. So I think, getting ready for 9th edition, the mechanics seem to be the same. They haven't changed. They basically said, I think the math hammer is still the same. So the mechanic of it is roll to hit, roll to wound, blah, blah, blah. All that's the same. And the tactics should be pretty similar. I mean, we don't know, but we're guessing here. But the thing is, and none of the books are being invalidated. So the data slates are still the same. Stratagems are still the same. But we don't know how anything's going to play. We don't know how any kind of, they talked about CP changes, but we have no idea how armies are built now. There was rumors of points adjustments. We have no idea what those are. I mean, we don't know anything at this point.
Well, and what we do know is that the negative to hit modifiers are going to be capped, and some other modifiers are going to be capped as well. I'm not sure exactly, what else is going to be capped, but that negative to hit modifier is going to be a big one. No more neg 3 to hit. Eldar planes.
Yeah, which is probably fine.
Wah, wah. It's sad, sad times. But differences to the way Eldar flyers or any flyers move around. They can go off the board. It sounds like from what they've said.
Yeah.
This new reserve rule that they've previewed. It sounds interesting.
Yeah.
To where armies that weren't able to reserve units before can now do so.
Yeah.
Which will be great.
And that's 7th edition right there, man. Remember you used to have to roll? All right, turn 2, I get it on a 4-up. Turn 3, I get it on a 5. Yeah, because it was, funny, random. Actually, it may have been 5, 4, 3. It doesn't matter. Anyways.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And then you had to scatter them. You put them down, then you had to determine where they went.
Yep. Yeah.
Scatter die.
That's good times.
It was lovely. Lovely times. That's one of the bad things with when 8th edition came out was it was such a deadly game that nobody had enough terrain to really handle how deadly a game that was. So it was literally, you go first, you usually win because you would shoot the other person off the board and just clear them. And it seems like this reserve rule is going to go a long way into helping those armies that don't have natural access to reserves. Looking at Gene Stealer Cult, it'll help those armies to survive. Yeah.
And I think that we don't know the full picture yet. And so you can I don't know. I get excited about what's coming out. Okay, that's cool. But I haven't written an army list in a long time just because I have no idea what's going to be good or bad. I could sit down in my battle scribe and start tweaking lists, but then I'm like, well, these points are going to probably change. So they could go up, they could go down. Who knows what's going to happen to them? So at this point, we're sort of in that weird holding pattern between editions where we're just kind of waiting, and we're probably the first game we play will be 9th. So at this point, it's sort of the things you normally do, like playing at League every week we used to do, or list building, or, going in and looking at tournament results. That's all gone. And we have a new edition coming out. So we're kind of in a holding pattern.
I would encourage everybody to not just... We're getting only itty-bitty peaks of the rules right now.
Yes.
And forget who said it. Somebody said that a part of Warhammer is, a definite part of Warhammer is complaining about the hobby. It is one of the aspects of Warhammer is complaining
Yep.
about the hobby, and sometimes we overreact. And oh man, have there been some overreactions I've seen based on just snippets of the rules.
Yeah.
The capping of negs to hit. I have seen more Crimson Hunters and Hemlock Wraith Fighters up on Facebook, to sell pages than I've ever had before. And they're very nicely painted too. So some people are having some knee-jerk reactions to this, and I would encourage everyone to keep their stuff and wait until you have the rules in front of you and you can kind of read through it and let it sink all into how it's going to affect your playstyle, because we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what all the rules are going to be. I mean, there could be, if you take 3 flyers, you get plus 10 CP. I don't know.
Yep.
So please keep your stuff. Please do not knee-jerk reactions. Sell your things, because there's a chance they could be very useful.
Yep, for sure. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about our plans for what we're going to do for the next month and a half of, as we wait for this new edition. But before we do, let's hear a word from our sponsor, TraderA.com. If you're like most Warhammer players, you own a ton of models. At one time, you had big plans for these models, but now they just kind of sit, gathering dust, unused and unloved. It's time to clean out your closet of shame. Visit TraderA.com and get cash for your used models. Trader A is run by Captain A, someone who's been in the community a long time and has done a lot to grow the hobby. He's also a personal friend of the show. Unopened boxes, models on a sprue, half-built models, primed, painted, even bits have value. The process is simple. Send him a list of what you have, he'll send you a quote, you pack it up, send in your stuff, and he'll get you cash. You can shop around, but you're going to find that Trader A gives you 40% more than the other guys. You want it quick, you want to get rid of it, visit TraderA.com. Get cash to buy the stuff that you really want. TraderA.com. Sell your models and get your cash quick and easy. All right, and we're back. So here, I'll go through my plans right now. And what I am looking at, first of all, is I am looking at my armies, the models I have. And we just talked about, we don't know the rules. You probably shouldn't knee-jerk. If you have 5 Crimson Hunters and maybe you only want to keep 2 of them, maybe you want to, I don't know, who knows. But don't sell things just because you think the rules are going to change and make them invalid, because you really don't know that. But I'm looking at my collection and I'm making some hard choices about, will I ever play this again? And I have come to the conclusion that there's some models and things I have that I'm probably just going to get rid of. I'm going to sell because I won't play it in a game. And it's kind of like time to prune my inventory a little bit, kind of clean it up. I'm going to sell some models that basically I know I won't play for at least several years. But at the same time, I'm going back and I'm working on a Marine army because I want to get that cleaned up and ready for the new edition. So I'm just working on some core stuff because I know will be good, like some just intercessors, because they're troops and you'll need them, right? But everything else, I have a bunch of stuff of different armies and collections and pieces of collections and partially painted collections that I haven't decided if I'm going to get rid of Magnus yet. I don't know if I can part with him, but
what?
I got to keep him. Yeah, I'll have to keep him. But I have like Dark Eldar. I have some random stuff. I have Death Watch things that I probably won't use. So I'm pruning my collection quite a bit and focusing on some of the stuff that I know I will be playing in the next edition.
Yeah. I mean, you can't get rid of Magnus. He's just a statement piece all his own with his peacock feathers and everything. I mean,
yeah, he's too cool. I won't get rid of him. I every time I say that out loud, I go, no, I can't do that. So
you wouldn't be getting rid of your 1,000 Suns, though, would you?
No, that's the thing. I think I'm going to have to. At that point, I might as. There's not much left to finish to have a little 1,000 Suns force, and so I can do that. I can do that, and I wouldn't mind playing it because that would be my only Chaos army, and I would keep it to just 1,000 Suns, and that would be that. So yeah.
I feel like you've already done the hard part. You've painted Magnus. You've painted Armon.
Yep.
You've painted your rubrics.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's true.
You could do some Zangors, and they're not hard to paint at all.
Yeah.
You got an army. You got 1,000 Suns.
Yeah, I think I have some rhinos that are primed that I can go with. But that's the kind of thing. Like that army is probably 75% done. From now till then, there's armies like that everyone has that, hey, you know what? I may want to play this in this edition. So let's go ahead and just work on the things that I have in my queue. What I'm not doing is buying anything because I have no idea. Buying stuff right now, I mean, who knows what's going to be good? So, or who knows? not even if it's good, but is this something that's fun to play with in this new edition? That's kind of important.
Yeah, because I mean, for sure, it sounds like some things are losing their effectiveness a little bit. Flyers still aren't going to be move blocking as much. I mean, there's going to be some tweaks to things, but you're right. It's kind of looking at what you got. Like, given what we know, am I going to play this stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you can do the Marie Kondo thing and go, does this bring me joy? And Magnus does bring me joy, so I can't get rid of him. But if you're looking at an army that's partially done that you won't play, regardless of whatever, over the years, we all kind of gain collections of things that probably it's time to get rid of. So, TraderAid.com will take your used models and sell them, and or you can do it yourself on eBay. And I'm probably going to do this. I'll see. I'll see what Aaron can give me for some of the stuff I want to get rid of. But yeah, I'm going to prune my collection, but then also focus on the things that I want to, that I know I want to get done and ready. But also, I'm not buying anything right now, and I'm not making any lists. All I'm doing is just along for the ride and waiting for the content to come out and getting excited about the releases. So
yeah, at least until you get your Psychic Awakening book in hands, right?
Your Engine of War. Yeah, but then again, and we'll have to wait till see what happens with Ninth.
Yeah.
So
you're telling me you don't want even one of those Flappy Bird flyers?
Oh, yeah, I'll probably get that because I have an AdMech army already. So yeah, it's more like getting rid of armies that I'll never play versus adding to things that I already have. Yeah, probably there. What are your plans?
Oh, I'm in the same boat. I'm not going to be buying anything new. I mean, with my work army. This is probably a good time to look at adding some more vehicles to the mix. I have 120 boys, like 90 Gretchen.
You'll never need more than that, hopefully.
Hopefully not. I don't want to deal with that. I have a gaggle of characters and like 8 mech guns, but I think it's time to start hitting the vehicles a little bit more because if nothing else, they're fun, and their Psychic Awakening book, their vehicles got a little bump between the flyers and the Morka Gorkanaut type thing.
Are you going to get a Stampa?
No, I'm not that far in yet. Not that far in, but he did get a little bit of love in Psychic Awakening, not a ton, but enough. But yeah, I'm with you. I really don't want to be buying much until we have an idea of what's going to be worth taking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good news is like every hobbyist, we have plenty of stuff to paint and build.
Oh, yeah.
As long as we are, there are some that don't, which I mean, that's amazing. But I think for most of us, I'm always going to have a backlog of things to get ready and get painted. So
yeah, it's just a question of how big that closet of shame or the backlog of shame is. Because if you're looking like months out, I mean, it might be time to start, like you said, pruning.
Yeah.
Maybe time to start culling some from the horde and putting them up for sale.
Yeah, you think about every edition lasts about 3 years. And if I look at something and I go, will I play this in the next 3 years? And if the answer is no, then the second question is, does this bring me joy? Like Magnus.
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then get rid of it. So but if it is yes, and I really like it, then of course you just keep it. I mean, there's no reason to get rid of things just to get rid of things, but it's probably good. It's not bad. It's just pruning. You're just pruning your collection. You're not necessarily selling everything. You're just kind of, you know what? This isn't something I really like very much. So
you're saying your Bandai Space Marine Intercessor brings you joy? You
don't wanna print that one? Yeah. I got that recently too. He is awesome. He's super cool. I'm not going to paint him. I'm just going to keep him the way he is as an ultra. But Matt, you have one too, do you not?
Oh, I don't have him yet. I was not as smart as you. I had mine sent to the GW store.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's free. That's free to have it sent there. And yeah, they haven't gotten it yet because everything's been shut down.
Oh, that's brutal.
I'm not as smart as you. Hindsight being 2020, I should have done what you did. But
yeah, he's cool. He's super cool. Yeah. Anyway, he's just
rub it in more that you have your action figure and I don't.
Well, you'll get it soon enough. I mean, we've waited this long. Since Christmas or whatever it was, we ordered it. So.
October. We ordered it in October.
Was it really? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, it's been
I
a
looked at the order
Man.
on the GW said it was October that we got that we ordered those things.
Only Warhammer you could pre-order something for like what is that since October to now? I mean that 6 months, and they could get away with something like that. I swear, it's amazing how, and they sold out quick. Like they sold that run really quickly. So
yeah, really fast.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. Well, 9th edition is coming soon, and I think we're all very, very excited about it. I'm just really interested in all of the little leaks they have, but yeah, we'll see. I'm mostly excited to play the game again with some of our local players and going to events again. And I know it's been a slow process to get there. But I'm hoping that, the release of 9th will also be the time when we can go out and play again. So it's kind of like a nice milestone in several ways. And yeah, it's gonna be a good day sometime midsummer when we can get together again as a community and play a new edition.
And hopefully play faster games.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to our show. We love to hear from our listeners, so please feel free to message us on Facebook or email us at thebattlehosts@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, you can help us in a few different ways. You can tell your friends about us and like us on Facebook. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can leave a review on iTunes, which does help to boost our listening audience. Finally, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thebattlehosts. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us with the cost of running the show and staying engaged with the 40K community. So, thanks for listening to Battle Hosts.
Remember to be a better gamer
and build a better community. Good night. Got a month and a half or so, probably.
You want to go to commercial first?
Yeah, I'm going to segue there.
Okay, sorry.
So,
sorry